am familiar with it. I am acquainted with it, okay? I have knowledge of it. Now, bring that into this intimate aspect. What does that tell us about this act? And Adam knew Eve, his wife. Wrong. All right, what I'm trying to say, I think it's more than just a casual thing.
It's a deep connection.
Yes. I have this, and I'll use a word that we would use, I have this intimate knowledge of this one that I have of no other person. Okay? And to me, it brings this, it's a deeper understanding, this connection that we would have with someone. And it describes this act. Adam knew Eve. He knew her in a very intimate way, in a way that he didn't know others. I suppose in my, I don't know how long I've been at Centerview time, I grew up here, went away to school, came back, preached full time, went away again, back again. I've shook every female's hand here at one time or another, guarantee it. So do I know you in this sense? No. I may know my wife in this sense. So it is a deep connection that we would have. And I want to bring that out because in just a moment, matter of fact, we'll go there now. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's start with verse 16. The text reads, 1 Corinthians 6, verse 16. He says, what? This is Paul writing. He says, know ye not that he which is joined to an harlot is one body? For two, saith he, shall be one flesh. Now, Paul is describing here sexual sins. And he goes on, because if you continue down to verse 18, 2 verses down, flee fornication. All right. But in verse 16, know ye not, he which is joined to an harlot is one body, for two, saith he, shall be one flesh. So even in sexual sins, we involve ourselves with this other person, and it is a unique relationship. Does that mean that if someone visits a harlot, or vice versa, whatever, two people who are unmarried, they are together sexually, does that mean they're married? Are they literally one flesh in the sense that they're married? No. Years ago, there were a couple of people here at Centerview that thought that whenever, if you had sex outside of marriage, and this was the verse, was the basis, that literally you're married to that person. Well, I don't think that's exactly what it's saying here. I do believe in context, though, Paul is showing it's a unique relationship here. And I say unique relationship, not that it's good, that it's actually bad. And he goes on to describe that later here in the text. He says, for two, saith he, shall be one flesh. But he that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. And the comment, the point he's making, if I have this relationship with my God, if I am a child of God, he is my Lord. The word Lord comes from a Greek word which simply means one who gives himself up to the will of another. If he is my Lord, I've given up my will to his. In other words, I'm living for him. If I then commit fornication, I'm giving myself to another in a sense, in a sinful way. Verse 18, he points that out. Flee fornication. I've defined it before. The word fornication comes from a Greek word porneia, whatever. And it's the word we get our English word pornography from. Surely there's enough said about that. It is a general word referring to sexual sins of any sort. He says, flee fornication. Think of Joseph, whenever Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, back in it says, every sin that a man does without the body, but he that commits fornication sinneth against his own body. How is that? This sexual act is different than most sins. And I'm not suggesting that we categorize sins. This is on a low level, this is moderate, this is high. No, sin is sin. Sin is a transgression of God's law. But how is it that Paul would write here, every sin is without the body, he that commits fornication sinneth against his own body? How is that?
You're supposed to live a holy and righteous life, so therefore sin is the opposite of holy, righteous life. It's contrary to the Word of God. It's a transgression of the Word of God, so that's why it would be a sin against his body. Violated God's law.
Okay. Indeed. It sounds like it's a unique sin. Every sin that a man doth is without the body, but, contrast to that, he that commits fornication sinneth against his own body. I think it goes, and Milton, I appreciate your input. I think you're right on target there. I think it goes back to the fact that Adam knew Eve, his wife, this intricate, that shared between two people. Again, Paul said earlier, I remind you, that verse 16, he that's joined to a harlot, he says, but I'll read it instead of rambling through it. What? Know ye not that he which is joined to a harlot is one body? For two said he shall be one flesh. I think we sin against our body in numerous ways.
When marriage is what he really, between a man and woman is really what God is, what he's referring, that if a man can't, it says that in 7 down in chapter, that if a man can get married or be married.
Sure. Yeah. As I've mentioned before this podium, sex is a language that only married people are allowed to speak, if you want to describe it that way. That's how it was described once to me. Matter of fact, I think Thomas B. Warren described it that way. If we look back, and I've got this later in my text here, if we look back at the book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and 7, where Solomon describes sexual sins to his sons and gives them warnings, and I think that's unique Solomon of all people. But he knew, and he talks about how it destroys a person, how to bring them to naught, the very lifestyle of chasing after women or women, from one man to the next and this kind of thing. It's destructive. I think it can be physically, think of the many sexually transmitted diseases. When someone cheats within marriage, and again, the word pornea describing all sexual sins, how many marriages have ended in divorce because one party was unfaithful? sex the language only for married couples. Married couples have children. It's the perfect environment for children. Outside of that, it brings so much heartache, so much discord, so many problems with so many people. I don't know that I've done this verse justice. That's why I wanted your thought. But he says, you know, we sin against our own body. Anyone else have a thought while I've been rambling for the last 4 or 5 minutes of dead?
Sinning against your own body brings to mind, to me, something like a drug addict. Somebody that puts something into their body that then makes it fight against itself, wanting something that it's not supposed to have.
All right, good. Yeah,
And then it can hurt your character too.
yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. You're right, Catherine, absolutely. And maybe that's part of this. All right, I appreciate everyone's input. Let me go on, or I'll ramble about one verse. Somebody else says mine.
And you know, sins can be forgiven, but there's consequences. And then if you think about sin against yourself, you know, that's a consequence that you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life sometimes. So it can be forgiven, but there's consequences to those sins. And when you sin against your own body, that's something, I mean, I might do something mean to somebody else. I might kill somebody, or I might lie to somebody. Well, that's kind of a sin against them. But this is a personal sin. You know, you're going to pay the consequences for it.
That I brought upon myself.
Yeah.
Good, good. I'm going to look at my notes to the view here. I'm going to skip forward just a moment and in my notes, and this pertains to what Mike brought up, the concept there. If you have your Bible, 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1. And I'll be going other places after I read this. But Jacob had many sons. The oldest one was Reuben. Reuben was known for a sin. Does anyone know what it was? Anyone remember?
Verse 1, it says, he defiled his father's bed.
Yes. And he's reading from 1 Chronicles there that I told you to turn to. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, what does that mean? I'll explain. You can look back to other places as well. The next verse we're reading describes it as well. But Reuben, one of Jacob's children, if you remember, let's go back even further. Jacob was in love with Rachel. He worked 7 years for her. After the 7 years, who did he end up with in marriage? Leah, Rachel's sister. So he has 2 wives. And if you remember, Rebecca in the beginning, not Rebecca, Rachel. Rachel in the beginning was barren, meaning she didn't have children. Leah, what about her? She had several children. Well, that's not going to work. You imagine the tension between these sisters married to the same man. So one gets a handmaid and gives her to wentest up to thy father's bed, when thou then defilest thou it, he went up to my couch. 40 years ago. Jacob remembers something about his character. Yes, we can be forgiven. But Reuben had to live with the consequence of his action 40 years prior. Still suffering in some ways in the eyes, especially of his father. Do we believe that Jacob, I don't believe that Jacob held this despised hatred of his son. But there were some things, some characteristics about Reuben. He says, unstable as water. Now, what does that mean? You ever thought about that?
He couldn't trust him.
Continues to move,
Do what?
continues to move, the water.
Yeah, there is no character. Okay. You've seen the classic Coca-Cola bottles. Not bottles, but cups, glasses. Connie's got 2 or 3 in the cabinet. I despise them. I don't know. They have a little base at the bottom, and then it comes up in the shape like of a Coke bottle, you know. I just don't like drinking out of them. I don't know why. It's just me. But if you take water and you pour in that glass, what kind of shape does the water take on?
The shape of the container.
Yeah. You take, I'm trying to think of something. You take something, a thing of a steel block, okay, a bar. If you try to take that bar and pour it in that glass, or, make it fit in that glass, is it going to fit? No, it won't. Reuben, just whatever the situation was, here was lust. Instead of having character to say no, you just conformed to whatever. You had no self-control. You had no discipline. You're just like water. You're unstable. You heat it up to 212 degrees, and what does it do?
Turns to steam.
It boils, it steams. If you, put it under a temperature of 32 degrees or less, what happens to it? It just conforms. There's no self-control to it. You pour it on the ground, what happens to it? It just soaks in the ground. If it's a pavement or something like that, it just spreads out. There's no self-control with you. There's no self-discipline. And I think that's what he meant. He said, you're unstable like water. Butch?
Dave, water can go any direction. It's just which way it's forced to go, and it can go any direction.
Yeah, and that's another point. If the ground is slinging, it's concrete up there, you pour it on, it's just going to flow, go with the flow. And I think that's what he had reference to Reuben here. And Reuben still had this stigma that something happened, if the commentary was accurate, some 40 years prior. Dwight, I'm sorry, I was on a rabbit.
I didn't say y'all uncovered it all, but water flows in the direction of least resistance.
Yeah, there's no, again, I don't know how else to say it, but physically, there's no self-discipline there. And the point is to hear is his father, he said, you're not going to succeed because of this, even though you're my strength, the excellence of power, and so on. Listen, actions today can affect me tomorrow. Not that I say that I can't be forgiven. And Michael, he brought up that concept. I want to make sure you understand that. Not that I can be forgiven, but it is that stigma. And so I think we would all agree in context, sex is a powerful thing that God created for marriage. If it were not for that, how many children would be here if it wasn't for this powerful emotion or passion within marriage? Probably none, or very few of us. Okay?
You look at the positive side of that, you see the negative side. The positive side, it was created to create that strong bond.
To enhance the marriage bond, absolutely. I don't know, I'll get time to take it. I can take another week of this, but I won't. But Ted, you're right, and I think that's why God in His infinite wisdom created it as such. Outside of marriage is problem, difficulty, stress, strife. Inside of marriage, it helps bind people together.
And that's why marriage marriage is important. I mean, it's a serious thing, but it's a good thing if you do, go in the
Certainly.
right direction.
Sir, okay, all right. I appreciate everyone's comments about that, but when it says unstable as water, thou shalt not exceed, he details why. Because of a sin that he committed again, if the time frame is right, some 40 years prior. So, a lot to be considered about that. Proverbs 6:32. I like what Solomon had to say here, and we're in the middle of a context, we probably ought to read it all. I don't think we'll have time to. But look what he says here, Proverbs 6:32. I hear a page turn, I'll wait. Proverbs 6, verse 32. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doth it destroyeth his own soul. Now how is that? Solomon says two things here. And, and please remember, sometimes I've heard people say, well, the Proverbs are sexist. In other words, it's the woman's just bad. He talks about the adulteress. Here he talks about the harlot, the woman here, if we read all this. Who was the principal? Why was the book of Proverbs written? Do you know he wrote this primarily to his sons, from what I've understood? That was not exactly inspired, but it was advice to his sons, and he's trying to teach them. And I can't help but think Solomon, with all his problems, 700 wives, 300 concubines, and later we read that his wives stole and took away his heart from God, and so on. But yet, he has this knowledge, this wisdom. Whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. What do you mean lacketh understanding? You haven't thought beyond the moment. Lacks understanding, you haven't thought about the after effect. You haven't thought about what you're doing. You haven't thought about this bond you've broken here, the vows that this person has made. You're going beyond that. You haven't really thought about that, the consequence of this. To me, that's what I think he means. You haven't thought this through. Had David thought the process through when he lusted for Bathsheba, when he called for her, and they, of course, sinned, and she conceived? Had David thought about the consequences before? Her husband being off fighting for David and his army? Did he think about she possibly could conceive? Did he think about all the problems it's going to bring into my home? Did he think then that he would have to murder a man with the sword of, I forget who they were fighting at the time, was it the Ammonite? Anyway, the sword of another enemy? No. He that commits adultery lacketh understanding. You haven't thought this through. And he goes on to say, you destroyeth his own soul. And last week I think we ended with what Peter said in 1 Peter 2:11, that lust wars against the soul. And I wish I could have the ability or the knowledge, the understanding to explain exactly that fact. How that lust wars against the very soul of man. And Solomon says here in the text, destroys his own soul. There's much more to this just in the fulfilling of some lust that can be done in a night's time. Put it that way. Any ideas when he says he destroyed his own soul? The meaning, Ronnie?
I remember years ago we used to talk about this subject. We used to talk about a person can get caught in almost the act, and you can stop it, and you can wonder, well, was they going to, or wasn't they wasn't, and they can destroy a marriage, because 40 years later, you'll sit back in your mind, was she going to, or was he going to, or did he do it, or didn't he do it, or did she do it, or didn't she do it, was she going to, or was she not going to do it, or was it he, or was it she, whoever it is, the man or the woman, and 40 years later, you still have it in your head. should never put your spouse in a situation where you question it.
And that's wise advice. Read on here, and if you still have your Bibles open to Proverbs 6:32, let's just go back and read for a bit here. Let's go back to verse 24, and I want to read through the rest of the chapter. Keep in mind what Ronnie was saying there. He says, to keep thee from the evil woman. As I said, ladies, don't think, well, it's only women that, no, that's not the context. It could be, he was simply writing, I think, to help his sons, if that makes sense, to advise them, and of course for all of us in that sense. But anyway, verse 25, he says, lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. All right, what is he talking about?
For them, flashers.
All right, flirting. I think
I
that,
like
yes,
it.
Catherine, true story.
The adulterer will search for that precious life.
Yeah, true story. Wasn't here at Centerview, okay? But I was frequently visiting the congregation back when I first started preaching. I'd already left Centerview, I was going to school, and was working with Valley Sun. Anyway, I knew the congregation, the small congregation, quite well, and there was a young lady that was there. And all of a sudden, I come in, and it was like, her dress was much shorter than normal. You ladies can help me here, I don't know. Her top was a little more revealed. I don't know if she's a push-up bra or what, but, she was invited a man that she was interested in. He was a doctor. He had just finished his, was it Dwight, clinicals, in other words, he'd gone through his.
Residency.
All right, thank you. He'd just gone through that. But anyway, here's a member of the church. And I remember I was asked to help with the Lord's Supper, and you're passing through. It was almost comical on my end because, as you had a lady trying to tug on that dress and trying to get it a little bit lower. Every time I go, he's there. They get married. They have children. As far as I know, they're still married today. All right? You help me. Why did she dress like that?
Same reason Burger King's commercials look different than what they give you when you order.
Okay? It's sad that the two single men had to respond to that. Never knew the answer, okay? But that is why. And here Solomon, this is, I don't call it common sense, it's commonly known. She wanted the attention of this man. All right, but isn't that what Solomon is describing here in essence? Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. And again, this girl, as far as I know, she was a good young lady, from what I knew of her. It was just, it was like, you're out of character. Now I know why you're out of character. But anyway, Solomon says, don't let her take you. Don't be enticed because of her beauty, because Melissa said, you're flirting. And I think that is the idea with her eyelids. In other words, whatever consumerism, all right. Well, I also have an invitation to go there and speak. They're having a Wednesday night series, and that's something we might want to do sometime. But they invite preachers from different places, and they'll provide a topic, and basically you have a visiting preacher, and he's going to preach. Well, mine is about homosexuality, and of course, under this broad heading is a lot of interesting things about how we should view fellowship and this and that. And anyway, he goes on. Well, I've been doing some research, and I found this out. It's called TED, T-E-D. It's liberal. It's some college puts this on, at least I think it's some college puts this on. And they have these speakers that are going to speak on a variety of topics. Unless you want to hear some liberal stuff, don't go there. But I found one where they were talking about homosexuality in the Bible. Wow, that got my attention. I want to listen to that. So I wasted 45 minutes of my time and listen to this, but they basically mock the scriptures in some way. They start off by here's, of course, again, remember, Christianity is often called Catholicism, but here's this guy with his collar on backward, and here's this other woman, and they're talking about imitating the Bible, and in essence, God is love. Do you know that, Jacob? God is love. No, don't but. You're right. I know what you're going to do. You're correct. But I'm just making this point. They used Sodom and Gomorrah as an example and said, listen, that was just people who were immoral. Okay? Because here's men in the city wanting this. Man, that's immoral. That would be ungodly. That's not God's love. But how twisted things are is my point. That the world views this topic, and they think, this doesn't affect me. This is not adverse. Well, no, Solomon says very clearly, you can't take fire in your bosom on your chest. You're going to be affected. No one is exempt from this. All right, he goes on, and here's the point I want to make. Verse 29, so he that goeth into his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief if he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. But whoso committeth adultery with one lacketh understanding, he doth it, destroyeth his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. Now here's Ronnie's statement, verse 34. For jealousy is the rage of a man, therefore he will not spare the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest him many gifts. You can't commit such sin. And here he's talking about adultery specifically. And not effective. Jealousy, the rage of a man. I talked to people, and some years ago counseled someone who was in, and it's a rage. It is I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, we're destroying ourselves when we involve ourselves in those kinds of things. All right, any thoughts or comments?
And it'd be the same way with the two women. That'd be jealousy
Yeah,
and
often
rage.
it is. Yeah, even from a homosexual perspective, yes. All right.
At Tennessee Bible College, there's a man come in and said his wife got pregnant by another man. I said, well, that's good as long as you didn't do the same thing. He said, what do you mean? I said, when she committed adultery, I said, you're still married to her. The point of adultery doesn't mean you're divorced. I said, if you've done the same thing, I think you're doing adultery too. He was a student there at the class, and he went, and he left the whole building, and he never come back to the school.
Well, that's sad. But you're correct. I can say, I can be mad at my wife, I'm going to divorce my wife, and I've done the same thing. No, so you have a point, Lonnie. All right. Our time is pretty well. We only have a couple of minutes. I do want to stress something, and I think we ought to teach this to our youth. Sex is not bad. Sex is not ugly. Sex is not dirty. Sex is